r/AskReddit by Reddicle. Teachers of Reddit. Which student has left the biggest impact on your life? I had a student who graduated from high school and called me a couple of years later to thank me, telling me that he had never become addicted to drugs and alcohol like his friends, had a nice family and a decent job. He claimed it was due to my influence as a teacher and that I was an inspiration to him. The irony is when he called me I was in the midst of my own struggles with alcoholism. His phone call was what inspired me in part to become sober. I did some sub work in a group home while I was a coach counselor there. Close enough to being a teacher, asked a kid to ease up on using the F word on the walk to the dining hall for breakfast. Kid got behind me, bashed me with a carafe of water. I ended up with a concussion and a row of staples across my head. Still get migraines. Little effer. I had a student who was a complete quadriplegic. From the neck down she couldn't do anything. She never did well in math before. She got stuck in my difficult class last year with her nurse and paraprofessional. She worked really hard and dominated her state exam and got exemplary status. She's working on becoming a voiceover actress. She's a great kid, and the total package she brings, nice, upbeat, hard-working, while being in her situation is inspiring. She brought me a package of Hershey's Kisses for Christmas last year, with a bow, edit, quad not para. Had a student that told me for 3 years that she couldn't do it. She came to pretty much all of my workshops, though, then 1 year, she didn't come. I was bummed. I realized I'd been waiting for her, then I ran into her. I asked her why she didn't come. Turned out she'd finally believed me, finally pulled it out of the hat and didn't need to come. She showed me her work. It was spot on. Frankly, kind of a top 10 moment in my life. I worked as a middle school tutor for 3 years after graduating high school. I tutored during school times. A G in real life named Yasmin who was an 8th grader was always smiling and she was just a good student overall. One day I see her crying to the teacher, crying a lot. I overheard that her dad got deported. It was just devastating for a 13-year-old to find out. It was so sad. From then on, I looked at students different. I learned that everyone will always have difficult issues inside them no matter how happy they seem. That they are people with their own lives and issues and not just people you're just teaching to. These are people who after school will face their problems daily. Always try to make the classroom as friendly and safe as you can make it feel because it might just be the comfort they need in their life. I don't have a story of a specific student that I want to share, though I have had many special ones in my years of teaching, but rather, I would like to share how I have truly grown to love every student I've taught for an entire year. There have been times where these kids could drive me up the effing wall and I would swear there was no sweet spot to be found. But somehow, I have grown to love every single one. I always feel like the end of the school year is bittersweet. In my first year of teaching, there was a student who had so much potential. He was such a computer whiz and a nice kid to boot. But given his unfavorable circumstances, he was doomed from the start. I was forced to move him up a grade even though he wasn't socially ready and it broke my heart when I learned he developed a heroin addiction. Kevin, edit, obligatory top comment edit. This thread blew up. My days of browsing rising AskReddit have paid off. Shout out to all of you. Chemistry teacher and atheist. I had a student who aced everything and was sweet, polite, and kind. She would talk about her faith, her church, and about attending church functions with such joy. She was never pushy or overbearing about it. It was just something that made her happy. I admired her happiness and well-roundedness, and it made me consider being a slightly less militant atheist. I may be a little late, but I was a preschool teacher and we had this little boy about 4 or 5 who lived with foster parents. And every Wednesday a social worker would pick him up and take him to McDonald's to meet with his biological mom. He would stay up all of nap time and draw her pictures and letters. And 9 times out of 10, she didn't show up. He wouldn't come back sad. He would come back raging, mad at the entire world. He would scream and cry and hit other kids. Sometimes we would have to hold him just so he wouldn't hurt people. He was a really smart and funny kid, but every Wednesday was living hell. Eventually his foster parents didn't want him anymore and social workers came and took him before any of us got to say goodbye. I worry about him all the time. Poor kid. Student. But I knew a French teacher who told the class to write down what they enjoy about French and what they dislike about it. Took the books in, and this one G in real life's comment made her very happy. She loved it so much she photocopied it, printed it out and told the student how grateful she was. And whenever she was sad she would look at that. Never got a glimpse of what that said. Pretty cute though. Shad. He committed suicide at age 15. I never saw it coming and always felt if I had looked at him, at every kid, just a bit better, I might have. I actually am not a teacher yet, but this happened during one of my practicum placements during my education. I was in a first grade classroom and I mainly worked with the struggling readers. I worked extensively with a young G in real life, and being that we had spent so much time together during the 3-week placement, leaving was very difficult for the both of us. While I was walking out the door, this little G in real life runs up to me and gives me a hug. And while I was hugging her, through her tears she says, "I wish you were my dad, so you could stay here forever." This experience has left a huge impact on my life. Not only that, I need to understand that my students have lives entirely different than my own, but that moving forward in my life I am going to do my best to be a great father and a fatherly figure for my students. It might just be the difference between despair and success for students like the young G in real life that I worked with. Not a teacher, but a student aide for kids with special needs, mainly autism. I swear every one of them is a natural comedian, and they give me something to laugh about every day. My life would be so humorless without those kids. Were you at Ms. Wellington? Emails all former teachers and thanks them. I don't like teaching and I don't want to be a teacher. I've taught for 3 years and I'm tired of it. I usually neglect the state mandated curriculum, create my own, and just try to have fun with my students and show them that books are amazing and can save their lives. I'm not an outstanding teacher, very average, probably, but a student of mine nominated me for a local news channel's Educator of the Week award, and they gave it to me based on his testimonial. He said that I have changed his life and that he loves to read because of me. So, if I get fired for not teaching to the state test, I'll happily leave, knowing that I've done what I feel an English teacher is supposed to do. There are two that stick out in my head. The first is the kid that, after making a scene and being difficult, simply walked out of the room when I was substitute teaching. I can't physically stop a kid, only verbally, so I had to call security to track him down. I never felt so frustrated and helpless that I was supposed to be responsible for him and just failed. The other was a kid in my first year teaching who gave me hell, opposing me, giving me lip, all that good stuff. A couple days into the second year, she walked in the room, looked at me, and said, "That's what you wore the first day of school last year." So, clearly she was paying attention. Hers was a very small class that second year, and I had been given clearance to let be whatever it wanted to be. So they formed a rock band. They spent half of the year working on 2 covers, but they certainly learned a lot and seemed to enjoy it somewhat. She was still pretty loud and rather oppositional throughout. By the end of that year, she actually let me know that I had been influential in her life and she was forever grateful after all that. I have had many students be my favorites, but I do have a favorite train wreck. This little respected woman was named Shared upon my first meeting with her. She had just returned from a 3-week suspension. I knew I would never forget that beast. I had gone up to her and said, "Hey Shay, I am Cinnabon Sam. It is nice to meet you." She replied, super casually, "I don't give a freak who you are, respected woman. Get out of my freaking face," all with a smile. The day continued to go downhill from there. At one point she threw a fit about the People Dust Bowl because I told her they didn't have cell phones. Worst teacher ever. To call for rain. At the end of the day, she stormed out of class, grabbed the first G in real life she saw by the ponytail and threw her on the ground. She proceeded to kick her in the face and turned to the security guards teachers, whilst flipping us off, yelling, "Suspend me now, mother freakers." She was the first kid that genuinely scared me, but also taught me that even the annoying kids aren't really that bad. It's never just one kid. There was one kid who hung out in the morning. He was a pretty emotionally stable kid with lots of friends, but he had some frick going down in his life that made it rough. It really solidified a thought I had. Children need at least one available parent in the home. I, the state, cannot raise 180 kids per year. I cannot be expected to deliver content when having to deal with the 1000s of variables that affect these kids. If they could be solved having a consistent adult figure. It's not me being a respected womany lazy teacher who should suck it up and get back to work. There is a problem that really needs to be solved. I'm not even his teacher, but Kevin has left a pretty big impact on my life. After reading this thread, I have decided we need more teachers like all of you. My high school had too many teachers that were so sick of the BS that they did not care anymore. It was a breath of fresh air to hear teachers that truly care about their students and want to see them succeed. You ask for the biggest impact. I have a former piano organ student who went on to earn a DMA, Doctor of Musical Arts, and who concertizes regularly. The biggest impact is that he stays in constant touch, and now teaches me on every latest cutting-edge technology and nuance. It's great when the student becomes the teacher, and the teacher is honored to learn from the student. Long may that continue. Grade 6 teacher, Mr. McLean. He was a great artist and spurred my interest in the endeavor. Before I got into his class, his reputation was that he was a scary teacher in the school. But after a month of class he was the most fair and respectful teacher of the students in the whole school. Genuinely interested in teaching us. He was a role model for my educational pursuits, and I've often thought about tracking him down to thank him. Oh, Maria. I was teaching high school earth science at a Catholic school. It was only my 4th year teaching, and I kind of sucked at it still. Maria and her 2 best friends were in my 2nd period class. I called them the triplets. I loved them all. But, somehow, Maria and I have still kept in touch. Over the past 8 years, I have seen her grow into a wonderful young lady. We had lunch together a few weeks ago. It's just amazing to see how well she has grown up. When I taught her, she was a goofy, silly, little 14-year-old G in real life, typical early teen G in real life. She has grown into a hardworking, strong, kind, fun lady. I'm looking forward to the next time I go home. She and I are supposed to go out for a beer together. A student who was shot execution style over missing drugs. I work with tough kids, so when they die, which they seem to do all too often, it doesn't usually impact me deeply. But I had worked closely with this young lady for a couple years, and despite serious challenges, she was making really good progress, like showing up to school almost every day. I had high hopes for her. After many years of teaching, I don't miss many students, but I miss her. I'm a guest lecturer at my university on funeral health, so I'm not a teacher per se, but I was moved by a student. After covering the censored and consent section of my lecture, a young woman stayed after to ask a question. I am really good friends with the regular teacher of the class, so she took the hint to give some privacy. The student broke down and said her boyfriend had been forcing herself on her. Despite her saying number, I encouraged her to report it and visit the counselor on campus. My friend, the teacher, said the student's writing drastically improved after, and she was very outspoken on dating violence. It impacted me, because I always hoped to make a difference. Knowing this one young lady empowered herself was amazing. I hope she succeeds at school. I'm not a teacher, but my cousin's sister is, so my cousin is, and I was getting career hours for high school by just kind of kicking in her class and frick. This was grade 4. There was this weird kid who was really awkward but ingeniously hilarious. He inserted so many witty comments and little jokes. None of the other kids got them, but me and the teacher loved him for it. He had a certain way with words and persuasion, like his speechcraft was 100. He was like a freaking grown-up in a kid's world. He never talked with anyone in class and walked home for lunch. He was alone, but wasn't at all lonely. I can't wait for this arsehole to grow up and be the not so popular funny kid, or fall into a spiral of depression because he is basically 30 in grade 10. But I prefer the former. So, do teachers want to know where their students went? I'll call him T. Had him for 2 years. First year, completed 2 assignments the whole year. Never participated once. The next year, will get up in front of the class and led it. His answers are truly insightful and intelligent. He still hates writing, but he does it. He gets good grades on his exams. He's a really positive person. Shows me my kids are worth believing in, and it's a long-term process that sometimes just clicks. I will never doubt my value as a teacher. Thanks for watching this radical video. Subscribe for the best Ask Reddit videos straight to your feed 3 times a day. It really helps me out a lot.